But what we're going to talk about today is we are going to talk about connecting together in our relationships, communicating in our relationships, and then also conflict resolution. We're going to find out how to fight, okay? We got to fight in our resolutions, and we got to fight for resolution. And so this is a challenging subject for us. We had to do a lot of research, and we had to really think about y'all because our marriage is perfect. Okay, we never fight. We never have conflict. We're always in great communication. There's never any misunderstandings because we are pastors, so obviously we're perfect. Okay, and if you believe that, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona. Okay.
I mean, obviously, if you know us and you know that it's not true, and we tell on ourselves quite often, but I like to look at it as we've had a lot of growing experiences and opportunities throughout our seasons of almost 18 years of marriage. And also, we've really had to put in the work, right? Marriage is work and effort. We put in the work to make it better and get through some seasons and have fun. It's not just all struggle. There's a lot of joy in it. But if you've noticed throughout this entire series that every relationship you're in takes work. No matter if it's marriage, if it's parenting, friends, coworkers, any person you deal with, it takes work and effort to make it good. And that's not a bad thing. They don't just happen on their own. It's not like automatically you stay in love forever kind of thing, or everybody stays in good standing all the time. And I think this is sometimes the trap we can fall into, that we assume once we're in the relationship, we just put it in automatic, and then all of a sudden we just kind of let it go, get kind of complacent. And when that happens, difficulties start coming in, you start to see some struggle. And then for some of us, it can go downhill pretty fast if you leave it on automatic. And so to help that, this is where we're going to start off today. And if you remember a few weeks ago, we started right where God started, back in Genesis 2:24. So if you have a Bible, or you can read it on the screens with me, and it says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." When we originally talked about it, we talked about the leaving portion being more of a priority. But now we're going to focus on cleave and what cleave means. And maybe you're not really sure about that. And the Hebrew word for cleave, it means to pursue with great energy and cling to something zealously. I mean, you're excited about it, you're going after it, and God is showing us exactly what we need to do to put in the kind of work that we need to keep our relationship and keep us together as one. So first thing, if you have your sermon notes out with you already, we're going to start. It's always important to pursue connection. Super important, because connection is what gives life to any relationship. And it's really what binds us together, like it says in Genesis. And we especially need that in marriage, no matter the year, no matter if you're new or you've been married 20 years. And it's important we find ways to create these touch points, these face-to-face and side-to-side moments. And in some seasons, it can get tricky, especially when you have kids, whether you have littles and toddlers running around, you're running on lack of sleep, or whether you have older kids and you're at every practice, every game, and it seems like all your schedules aren't intertwining and going together. But that means we just have to be intentional about finding time to make this happen. So how are some practical ways you can connect with your spouse? And so one of the first things that we like to look at, we kind of categorize this for ourselves, it's kind of the side-by-side kind of connection. And this is more of like hobbies and activities you can do together, whether it's something you enjoy together that's mutual. Maybe you're joining in on something they like, hobby like soccer. I'm not a golfer. Y'all all will throw a club because I can never hit the ball. Anything and everything like that. But the point is you have to schedule in fun moments, because marriage shouldn't always be about something serious or having to handle problems or figuring out debt or payments or all the things. Like, you need moments to laugh together, to have silly moments together, all this fun bonding. And so some of the things that we do now in our marriage, I mean, sometimes we are going to the park, sometimes we're doing hikes. Even now, and it's probably also more for us health-wise for different reasons, is we take walks during the week. And when we take walks, it's literally probably like 35, 40 minutes of our day, and it actually gives us one-on-one time that we can actually talk to each other. No interruptions, no phone, just our watch tracking how far we're going. And so that's one of the things we do.
Yeah, and if you want to laugh at each other, go play tennis, right? Like, go to the park and try to hit that ball across that net, and you will laugh at each other, I promise you. But then there's also face-to-face.
Yeah, and one of the other things, too, I want to mention, outside of marriage, too, have intentional time with your family and your kids. Like, schedule time alone. Even if they're grown and getting more independent, take time with them. Like, it's important that you keep that connection so that they can feel free to talk to you, whether it's ice cream, hiking, biking, whatever it is. But more of the face-to-face connection is kind of like this one-on-one. So this is when we're talking about date nights. Date nights cannot be optional, y'all. No matter how busy, no matter how tight the budget is, they cannot be optional. You absolutely have to schedule it in. This is time, to kind of stoke the fire and fall in love and stay in love and do all those things again. And it can look different. Like, it doesn't always have to be going out and spending money. We like to do kind of both things. We'll go out. We like to try a lot of new foods, actually, go out to the movies, kind of go out for dessert. We'll do that, but then a lot of times we actually stay inside. So we stay in our own home. We have a nice home, and we'll kind of set up a deal in a manner like that.
Yeah, and when you're going out on a date, don't be boring, okay? If you're going out, like if you're going to take the time to go out on a date, spice it up a little bit. Get dressed up. Go somewhere nice. Still dressed to impress, right? Don't just like, oh, I'm going in my pajamas. Let's go out to gyms, and you know what I mean? Like, come on, like, get creative. Take them to somewhere they haven't been before. Do something you never done. Try new things. Oh, we went axe throwing. It was dangerous. You know what I mean? It's like,
I was scared.
Come on, and you just have to. You have to be creative. Don't continue just to go, well, this is our favorite restaurant that we always go to. I mean, really go out and venture out, and then for us, we're very busy, so we don't always find time to be able to go out, right? But we can also have date night at home together. And so when Josiah was younger, poor boy, he's going to get talked about. When he was younger, we put him to bed, and then it was adult time. You know what I mean? Like we'd go into the kitchen, we'd play games together, or watch a movie on the couch together, talk together. Now he stays up too late, so he's like, he walks out, we're dancing in the living room. He's like, what is going on right now?
And literally he runs back down the hall.
You gotta date even in your house. It's okay to date. You don't have to go out to a restaurant to date, but you do need to take time, spend it with each other, and really enjoy life still. Just because you are married doesn't mean that you've made it and it's time to relax and I can just kick back because what is she going to do now? I got her. No, that's not how it works. You have to continue to pursue and spend time to each other. And so these are just things that we got to remind ourselves, because it's real easy to kind of just relax and sit and just let life happen. And so we have to connect. But as we connect, it's going to lead into the next part, which is our communication. Because if we can get communication right, like I know nobody in here has ever been like, he never listens to me or she never listens to me, right? Communication, if we can get that right, then everything else down the road, if there's conflict, we will do much better at it. As a matter of fact, if your communication is good, you will save yourself from a lot of conflict. A lot of conflict comes from lack of good, healthy communication. So communication is important, not just in marriage, but in all relationships, but especially in marriage, because it builds a bridge between two people, right? And it connects those two people together, and we must carve out time to communicate because it's essential for healthy relationships and healthy marriages. I don't want you to get confused, though, because a lot of times we just think that everything is healthy communication. But healthy communication doesn't mean that you're just talking. It means you have to actually communicate. So just because in the morning when you got up and it's like, make sure you pick up Josiah, make sure you get to work, make sure you do this, make sure you clean the house, just stop by H-E-B on, pick up the laundry. That's not healthy communication. That's the chore list, right? Do not assume just because I've told my spouse everything that they need to do today that we've actually had communication in our marriage. We need something that actually will bind us together and that we're sharing. And so these steps that we're going to share with you, we need to take them so that not only do we feel listened to, but the person that we're communicating understands that, hey, this is important to me and we're connecting and I want to express that what you're saying to me is valuable to me, and then I want you to make me feel like what I'm saying is valuable to you. Everybody wants to feel valued and important, and not just like all we ever talk about are the things that we have to do for the kids. And so one of the parts of our communication that's really important to get right is our spoken word. That is a huge part of our communication. And so we need to understand that there is a lot of power in the words that we use to communicate. And so we have to choose in our relationships how we use those words, because they can do different things. If I use my words poorly, then I can destroy a relationship. But if I use my words properly, then I can help bind us together. And so words can really wound a person. Right? I can wound her with my words, or I can use them to heal her when she's down. And so I could choose how I use the words. Have you ever had somebody drop a bomb on you? Like they just walk up and drop a bomb and walk off? Like I could do that. I could just walk by, make a sarcastic comment and just go, take that and walk away. Or I can use it for repentance and to help the hurts that I've caused in the situation. And I can bring healing into that. Your words absolutely all the time have power, and they can bond your relationship or they can break your relationship. And you have to decide which way you want that to be.
Mm-hmm. So definitely watch your words. But here's the other thing that you kind of have to watch out for is to know that there is a difference in how we communicate in our words, and that's okay. And so I don't know if you've noticed in here, but depending who you're talking to, and usually there's a big difference between men and women of how we process and how we use our words. And this is the psychology background in me coming out. Yes, and this is generally speaking, this is kind of a little bit of a stereotype, and so you can kind of switch it around. But they say a lot of women tend to prefer being more detailed in their conversation. You know, we talk a little bit longer. We want to share a little bit of the ins and outs. And it's not...
They talk a little bit longer?
A little. I have important things I need to share.
Who's gotten a text message that you have to scroll, right? You
got
to scroll to get this thing.
Who gets
and our
the okay after a paragraph?
Okay.
There is a huge difference, but we are detailed, and it's not necessarily like a negative thing. Sometimes people can misconstrue it and think, oh, they're trying to be nosy, or oh, they're trying to interrogate me with all the questions kind of thing. Well, a lot of times they say it's because we have so many boxes open, we're just trying to filter things out. We're just trying to get settled in our mind, and sometimes talking it through helps us settle. Whereas they say men on the other side are a little bit more of the opposite, and they're more of a headline type conversation. They're more about facts. And it's not that they're being short because they're being uncaring. They're really just trying to focus in and fix the problem. You know, they're thinking the other stuff is smaller details. They're really trying to help. And sometimes we can misconstrue that and think they don't care about our feelings. You know, we don't want the help. We just want to talk. And they're really genuinely trying to fix. And depending on your relationship and depending how God created you and made you, you can actually be the flip of this, and that's okay. But the most important thing to remember is that no matter how different you are, that's not a bad thing. That's really not a bad thing. The important thing is you just have to take the time to be intentional about how your spouse works, how they communicate, and how they receive it. And for you to do the same for them. You really have to do that for each other, and that's okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that she kind of hit it to, I just want to make sure that everybody picked up on that. You have to be careful because sometimes when your spouse is really communicating a lot, I can listen to her and I could think, oh, well, she's telling me her problems because she wants me to do something about them. And a lot of times that's not actually true. She's not telling me everything so that I can fix her problems. She can fix her problems on her own. She's capable of that. She's telling me so that I can join in with her, right? Understand, try to comprehend what she's going through and be in the moment with her and not fix her. And so sometimes in that time, if I'm trying to just fix it while she's communicating, she's getting more frustrated because I don't want you to fix my problem. I just want you to listen to my problem. So you got to be careful that you're not always just trying to, oh, my job is to fix. My job is to fix. Sometimes your job is just to sit there and listen. And then respond and sympathize and to be there in the moment with them. And so we can see that it's confusing sometimes. Have you ever gotten to the moment where you're just like, just tell me what you want me to do? Like just tell me what you want me to do. And so what we want to do is we want to help you in that because maybe it hasn't been communicated. And so what we want to do is we want to give you 5 keys to having healthy communication in any relationship, especially your marriages. And so how we ended up with these things is, believe it or not, at one point, we were getting really frustrated with each other in our communication because she just wasn't getting me, and so as we were getting frustrated when we had unhealthy communication, we were really starting to end up conflicting a lot, right? Or as my brother said, heated fellowship, right? And so we just weren't meshing well, and so we had to do something about it. And so we started doing some research. As a matter of fact, we went to an EXO conference, a marriage conference in Houston, to try to just see what was out there to help us. And so through a lot of reading, a lot of researches, Jimmy Evans is a great resources for marriages in the EXO. And so we gathered a bunch of stuff, and that's what we want to do. Is we want to show you 5 keys that we've learned through the years of how to have better communication. So the first key in communication is by being in it to show that you care. You need to care about what's being said. And so Practical steps that you can do to show that you care in communication. I know these are going to sound like well, duh, but come on, let's just be honest. Some of us are not doing this right. So like one of the things that you should do when you are communicating with your spouse or someone in a relationship is you need eye contact, right? So I had a really bad habit of assuming that I could watch soccer and talk at the same time. And so like I'm just like kicked back and I'm like, like, and I'm just,
And if you know him and my son, when they watch TV, they zone out, like their mouth open, faces, and he only caught every word here and there. And I'd ask him, what did I just say? Like, exactly, what did I just say? And he could give me a little glimpse, but he didn't understand what I was talking about.
So men, code for what did I say means I know you're not listening.
I know you're not listening.
Okay. I'm just helping the brothers out today, So like I had to learn, like when she came in the room and she would start talking, I had to go, okay, is this something that's going to be quick? Yeah. She just needs to tell me, or is she trying to communicate with me? And when she's trying to communicate with me, it's like
sitting down.
Pause. Okay. I had to pause the TV so I could look at her and give her my attention. Maintaining good body language, positive body language. If your spouse comes in and says, hey, do you have a minute? Don't go, I'm watching the game, right? Can it wait till, your body language speaks a lot too. Mm-hmm. And let me just tell you, when you show that you don't want to communicate, the other person can see that, right? Mm-hmm. If you are anything like me, I don't hide anything in my face or my body language or anything. And so, basically like, well, never mind. I don't even want to communicate with you because there wasn't good, positive body language. When you speak, make sure you use good levels and tones. I'm a loud person, if you haven't figured that out. And so when I get excited, my level goes up, right? And even if we're not in conflict, sometimes if my level goes up, it feels like we're in conflict to her because she's just like, well, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, I'm not yelling. This is just my voice, But my tone has gone up. Or maybe you're a sarcastic person, right? Sarcasm is fine with some people, but it's not with others. And so if you're sarcastic in communication, a lot of times that can be taken as negative. You don't really care. You don't want to be in it. And so there's sarcasm there. Connecting emotionally through contact and supportive words. When we're talking about like that sharing portion where they come and they want to share everything with you, if your spouse is sitting down and pouring out their heart to you, don't like just sit like this, right? Don't be like, oh my God, this is going on. Just hold their hand. Like, I understand what's going on. Eye contact, hold their hand. Make them feel like you're connecting in the conversation with them, because now I'm engaged and I'm not just trying to get out of it. I'm maintaining a positive attitude and I'm being sensitive to what's being said. Now we're in some healthy moments where we're communicating positively in a way that is being heard.
Sorry. All I can think about is the touch and the feel, where he has a tendency to even joke in the middle of such a strong one of like, oh, I can make you feel good later. I'm like, time and place, honey. I'm trying to be serious. Yeah. That's literally what I just imagined right now. But he's right. All of that little stuff matters.
I can make all problems melt away.
It's super important to show you care. But number 2, and this is something we've had to learn to implement, and it kind of goes together.
Earmuffs, children.
The second key is to listen carefully to what is being communicated. Because here's the thing, is the important factor is how we're listening, like we said, and that's huge. And just because you're hearing what's being said doesn't mean you're actually listening to what's being said. Automatically with our ears, that's the function of what they do, right? They hear the audible things that come in. And so it's very possible to hear what somebody's saying, like he said earlier, listen, nod, shake your head, and have your mind completely in a different place, thinking about something else where you're really not catching what's going on. And it's not because you're trying to ignore them. Sometimes it's just hard shutting off what's happening for the day. But this is super important, especially when it becomes a serious topic, right? When they're coming to you and it's something important. Maybe you just had a disagreement or communication, they're trying to come back, or even worse, like you're in the middle of a fight now and they're trying to come back and talk to you. So this is important, how you listen. And there's one of 2 ways that this can happen. And this is kind of where we found ourselves kind of in the middle, especially in the really hard season where we weren't trying to see eye to eye. So you can either listen to understand, and you're actually trying to take in what they're saying, you're trying to figure out where they're coming from, or you're trying to listening to respond. And if you're trying to listen to respond, that means you're really not fully listening. You're already trying to think of the answer that you want to say back to try to prove you're right in a situation. And I guarantee you, if you're trying to prove that you're right in this situation and you haven't listened, you're going to miss that connection, bringing unity back together, how to grow close, and to be able to really understand each other. And so if you're doing it that way, I'm telling y'all from personal experience, it does not go well to listen to respond. And so what can you practically do? What is something that you can put into play to do it better? Because this is some of the things we've had to learn, and we did it way wrong in the beginning. So one of the things we've learned, and we're kind of suggested too, is to ask questions. Ask questions when you hear your partner asking you about something, when you're hearing them talk about something that they're feeling or going through, or maybe even just a minor miscommunication. But try not to ask it in a sarcastic way. Yeah. I mean, tone is appropriate.
Let me help the brothers out. Okay, when your wife or your person in your relationship tells you a whole bunch of stuff, don't let the first question be, is there anything else? You know, like don't let that. Don't
try to cut it off.
Don't use like they told me to ask a question, not to cut it off. Right?
Yeah,
that's not the question you're supposed to ask. Okay, make sure it's a question that has them talk more about what they're expressing.
Because if you're like me, that makes me spicy, and it's just going to turn into a whole different type of conversation.
Maybe you like it spicy. I don't know.
He says that. He doesn't if he pushes the spice too far. But the second thing you can do after the questions, which is kind of good for reaffirming, is kind of respond to what they've talked about. Respond to how you think, that you understand that how they feel. Respond in some shape, way, for how you want to help, what kind of resolution you want to do. I mean, that's really important so that they understand that you're not just listening, checking the box off and saying, okay, got it, done, kind of thing. Just put a little bit more effort into it.
Yep. The third key is to speak praise and edify through verbal communication. And we're going to give you a verse for that. That is Hebrews 3:13. It says, but encourage one another daily as long as it is called today, so none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Man, I can't talk today. See, here's the thing, and this is true for everybody. Nobody likes criticism. Everybody loves praise. Everybody wants to be praised. And matter of fact, praise even has power in itself, because if I'm always edifying and praising her, then she's going to feel comfortable enough to share more, right? I can unlock her heart by saying good things about her. And so nobody likes it, and maybe this is something you've experienced, nobody likes it when the only communication that's happening in the household is to tell each other what you've done wrong for the day, right? If that's all that's ever said is, well, you didn't do this right, or, you didn't do that right, or you didn't, if she was the cook, and all I ever tell her is like, well, it's a little salty, you know what I mean? Or if you folded the clothes, it was like, that's not how I fold the clothes, right? Nobody wants that. Only time you talk to me is to tell me I'm wrong, that I didn't do it right, or what I should be doing better. No, I want you to tell me the good stuff too, right? And so if we focus on praise over criticism, then we can make a better impact. See, praise creates intimacy. And intimacy is what we're after in our relationships. But criticism can actually close a person off. Let me tell you, if you are looking at your spouse and they're like, well, they never want to talk to me, maybe because the only thing you ever say to them is hurtful things. Why would anybody want to talk to you if all you ever do is just complain or criticize or tell them how they're wrong? They're shut off to you. And so we have to realize, what are we focusing on in our communication? And why would they want to or not want to talk to us? So if we are focusing only on the negative, if all I ever see from Adrienne is how she didn't fold right, she didn't cook right, she didn't raise Josiah right, she didn't do this right, then to her, the only thing that I see in her is that she's a horrible person that can't do anything right. But if I'm constantly praising her for everything that she does, then what she sees is a person that loves and cares for her. And so how we communicate also expresses how we view the person, and it shows our heart towards a person. So yes, please make sure you praise more than you criticize or you are negative towards the person that you're communicating with. A practical step that you can take in this is, don't just express your feelings, but make a choice to express what you truly view that person as. I chose to marry her. It doesn't matter if she's perfect or she's not perfect. I need to choose, because I love her and because I chose her, to view her in the way that I view her the day I said I do. A lot can happen in between that, but I got to always choose to view her and speak to her the way that I saw her when I chose to marry her.
Yeah, we truly want to champion them. And I remember even hearing at EXO Marriage, another practical ways to kind of help that out is to truly look at your spouse, even in moments of contention, to see them the way the Father does and to see them exactly as a new creation, not by past things, not by the heat of the moment, but how would your Father see him? And another practical thing we actually did recently, because he actually brought it up, just a simple way, and it seems like it's not a big deal, but it goes a long way, especially in marriage, is to thank your spouse for all of the little things that you see them do, whether it's putting away laundries, whether it's closing cabinet doors, like saying, oh, I love when you close every door in the house.
She's saying that because I won't close the cabinet.
All of that, but every little thing you do, and to not fall into this kind of trap of like expecting it from them, because it makes us ungrateful, right? And I remember him even saying that, like, especially because recently, like, he'd been cooking all the time. I've been staying at work late. And, it kind of is a little bit defeating when you're putting all this effort in and your spouse doesn't notice it, because it takes a lot when you're both working, both doing all the things, to say thank you, even if it's little and the big things. But here's the next step, and we're going to go into the fourth key, because there are times when conflict is going to happen, and there are times where you're not always going to say something positive. You got to handle something that you see going on. And so the fourth key is to have all confrontations in a truthful and loving way. You see, because the thing is you can't get rid of conflict altogether. Like, there's no way you're going to get rid of it. And the thing is this can be the trickiest part of it, because it can get messy fast and it can go downhill pretty fast. So the first thing we have to remember is that how we say things really do matter. And you can't like take it back in and put the toothpaste back in, right? And so you have to watch how you say it. And even if you feel you're right about something, even when you feel you're justified about something, that doesn't mean you can go off however you want. That doesn't give you a right to do that. We have to balance what we're trying to bring front and center with the truth and say it in a loving way. Because it's really hard for somebody to listen and expect them to respond well if you're going in like a hot mess and being emotional about it. Or another huge thing that people miss is making an accusation, like making an assumption of what you heard, what was said, and putting them in such a bad light. It's very hard for somebody to receive that and think like, man, you just thought I was the worst person ever. You thought that about me. How would you think they would respond, or how would you feel if they came at you that same way? And so that's not a great thing to do. And some of the practical steps that you can take to help make this happen better, and this is something that we had to employ ourselves, is you have to start the day, and even before a confrontation happens, you have to start it positively. You have to be positive. You have to even start in that moment to say like, hey, we're on the same team. I love you so much. I'm so happy to be married to you. We're in this together kind of thing, before you even get into what may be a little bit negative or may be hard to talk about. And sometimes it's for both sides. Sometimes it's for them so that they know they don't have to be on the defensive and like the war has begun. They're going to put up their dukes. But it's also so that it reminds you're on the same team. You're not supposed to be at war with each other. You're not trying to do this whole winning thing. And the second thing that's super important when it comes into any and all confrontations is timing matters. Timing is everything. And you have to make sure that you do it in the right time, the right place. Some of the things is you can't do it on a super stressful day, even if it's something that you want to attack within that hour, but you can see your spouse has come home from work, they're super stressed out. Like, you can hold off an hour or two. You can wait till after dinner. You can wait to go on a walk. Another thing that you need to wait for and not rush into things is when you feel like you're a hot mess emotionally, and maybe you're kind of like me, he's more mellow, I'm definitely more spicy, fast. I've gotten better over the years, but if you feel yourself already at 100, like, it's your responsibility to take time and to bring yourself down. Like, it's not fair to throw all of that out on them without them even knowing. But here's the second thing of that side. So here's the opposite. You cannot ignore it. You cannot hide it under the rug. You cannot pretend like, oh, I'm going to let it go and it's never going to come back out. I guarantee you, both scientifically it's proven, it's even biblical, you cannot hide away these things. You have to deal with an offense. You have to bring it up, because it's always going to come back. Whether it's in the next fight and it's going to pop up real small, real fast, it's going to pop up in the words you say, somehow it's going to come out, so you have to deal with it.
Yeah, nobody likes the fight where they're like, well, you remember like a month ago when you did, right? And that happens because you didn't deal with it a month ago. And so now when it comes and it happens again, it's like, well, now I want to talk about what I was mad about back then. That's unfair, right? You have to bring it up then. But timing also can be some different things. We are continuously learning each other. And so what I have learned about me that I had to share with her was I don't like to be confronted in the mornings. I don't know if anybody else experiences that. Like when I wake up, I want to like start my day positive. I want to like take time to work into it. And if you like in the first thing in the morning come and like, hey, I need to talk to you about what, like, no matter if she says it in the best, nicest way or in a bad way or anything, I'm not receiving it because mornings are not a good time for me. I rather wait till the afternoon till the day's ruined already. You know, like wait till someone else messes it up. And then like, okay, well, the day's ruined. Go ahead and talk to me about your problems too. And so mornings are not a good time for me. And so we would fight. And even though she's like, well, I'm doing it the way that you wanted me to do it. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's just the mornings. I can't handle it in the mornings. So that could be timing as well.
Yeah, and so that's something we had to work out because I'm a long processor and I've learned the habit of like not to jump out in my emotions. So I would process all night, even listen to podcasts, get myself in the right place. And I realized, okay, that's not right. I have to serve him. But then he also had to agree to talk about it when I was ready to talk about it, right? So Ephesians 4:26-27 says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. You see, what this verse is saying is that we can't let our anger dictate our emotions and our actions. And it very much wants to do that. We definitely can't let it stop us from coming back together and coming back in unity. Because the danger of pushing things off is that the enemy will have a chance to set up shop right in your mind. And we've learned this from experience, y'all. Like there was times where we didn't come back together that night. It would be a couple days. It was like the withdrawal mode. And I'm telling you, the thoughts that I was thinking, and even him, like when you came back together, it was that much harder. Like it really is this supernatural battle. And even though most people aren't comfortable with confrontation, I think a lot of people really aren't comfortable with it. There are some people we joke about in our relationship, I'm very natural. I'm not afraid of it. And I'm ready to go whenever, however long. I've been a fighter by nature most of my life, but he is not. But the thing about it is you have to decide that it's not always scary. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but you have to decide to do it that day. I mean, that is literally what this verse is saying, that you have to commit to what you're dealing with. No matter if it's small, no matter if it's big, no matter if it's a hurt that it's caused you, you have to start. And one of the things that we've actually started doing lately that was a positive change, and actually probably it's been about a year or two, is we decided to make a promise to start, and he asked me to do it first, is to start the moment it came up when it was very small. Like to not wait. Sometimes I felt like I was doing him a better service. Like I didn't want to be naggy about it. And he was like, no, do it then it comes out better. And then it could just be just a regular talk, just kind of go with the flow. And so that's one of the changes we had to make, is to start just in the little things, just making it a regular conversation. But what was a real game changer for us was like what I just last talked about, is we had to decide is to not be unhealthy anymore and choose to talk. Like the sun cannot go down anymore. Like we had to make a talk, which meant we had to take not only responsibility for both of our feelings, but we had to get ourselves ready to talk and to restore things within that night. Like we couldn't just say whatever we wanted and create all the damage and just go our separate ways. Like we had to actually choose to restore our marriage because we wanted to continue to stay married.
Which means there's some late nights. Okay?
Yes.
The fifth key is to communicate with openness. You have to be able to share yourself with the person you're in the relationship with, especially if you're married. You should be like sharing your innermost thoughts and feelings and dreams, because how are they supposed to connect with you if you're not sharing yourself with them? And we've talked several times in a marriage, you shouldn't have separate dreams and goals and stuff. And so we have to share and we have to communicate that so they can know the innermost thing. The mistake that you can make is if you're taking that somewhere else and you're not having it in the marriage, because if you open up to each other, then now we're connecting to each other, and then that creates the intimacy that we're after in the relationship. Though it may be different for each person, the way that we open up and the way we communicate and we share, that's okay. We just both need to absolutely be open with each other with positive positive things, not just the negative things, but with everything that's good that's happening in the relationship and everything that we desire and want and what we're going through. We have to share that with each other.
And sometimes it takes practice, and that's okay. I think sometimes we'll rely so much heavily on friends and best friends that we forget our spouse is there for us to connect and to lean on and have that true friendship with. So I always tell people, like, if it feels uncomfortable, don't stop. Like, if you want to start with smaller things, shorter things, especially if you had like a rough season, learn to build that friendship and that openness.
Yep. Okay. So if we don't communicate, that was the communication part. But if we don't do that right, sometimes we find ourselves in conflict. Dun, 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 right? You know, we end up in fights. And so it's hard to escape conflict. So we have to choose to fight for resolution. And we have to choose to take steps that we both need to take to be able to keep the unity in the marriage, in the relationship, and between us before the issue divides us. We have to, what we like to call, have a plan of action. And everyone in here needs to have a plan of action in their relationship. And this is the reason you have to have it, because everybody is different, right? We're all created different, and we all were raised differently, and we bring a lot of stuff from our childhood or what we saw or what we've used, and we bring it into our relationships. Because of this, each person, as they have become an adult or as they're becoming an adult, they're developing the way that they react and handle conflict. And it's not always the same. Some people in here are maybe like me, we're more passive, or we tend to shut down. Like, if you want to fight, we're just like, oh, forget it. And we just shut down, and we don't want to do that. Some people are the opposite. And when there's conflict, they just go the opposite 100%. I lose my temper. I'm mad. It's all out war. I'm throwing stuff. It can happen. And some people are, I think this is what I was for a long time, was I just apologize to end it. I don't care who's right. I don't care who's wrong. I just don't want to fight. So I'm just going to say it's my fault and apologize, just so we don't have to talk about it, because I don't like conflict. I don't want to have to go through it. So if I apologize, it'll just end it, and nothing really gets worked out or communicated, because all I want to do is for this to end. So I'll just say sorry, and I'll take the blame, just so it's over. So these are our natural tendencies, but just because they're natural to you, just because it's the way that you have naturally developed your reaction to conflict, doesn't mean that it's the best for you or your spouse or your relationship. And so what you have to do is you have to form a plan that works for both of you, that is the best situation for your relationship, and how you handle conflict is not just natural, but it's a chosen way going, this is going to give us the best result into it. And so if you're a highly emotional person, if you're one that, like, I'm quick to anger, well, then maybe your thing is, hey, we acknowledge that there's a problem, but we're going to take 30 minutes before we start talking. We just need to calm down so that we don't yell at each other. If you are one that has an issue with body languages, one of the things that we discovered is, if we're in the living room, I'm a lounger. Is anybody a lounger? Like, if I'm on the couch, I'm like this. I'm like, like I'm kicked back. Well, that spoke that I wasn't really caring about what she was saying. So sitting on the couch for me is not good for her, because my body language, and she's like, well,
and
you don't even care. Yeah, she's like, you don't even care. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just sitting here. Well, the way I was sitting was bad for her. So we're like, okay, well, where can we? So we sit at the kitchen table. Why? Because now I'm sitting up in a chair, and I'm looking at her across the way, and I'm not laying back. So you have to develop, like, how does this work for both of us, where it's a plan for peace, a neutral site that basically works for both people and how you're doing. So what we want to do is we want to give you 4 more steps. Now that you know how to communicate, well, now how do we resolve conflict? And so we're going to give you some steps in that.
And truthfully, it's not just preference here. Let me preface it with that. This is God's way. And they can look different ways. And the Bible is very clear on how we have to handle conflict. But one of the first steps that we've kind of learned ourselves is you have to do step 1, which is remember you are dealing with imperfect people. You have to remember you are both human. Like, you are coming with different strengths, different weaknesses. And just because there is a point of conflict or disagreement, it doesn't mean that the marriage is doomed to fail. And it doesn't mean that you've married the wrong person. It doesn't mean any of that. It means you have to watch going into this negative frame of mind and thinking that way. But instead, it means that we're imperfect and we both need Jesus. Like, we need that grace. And if you can look at them like that, and you can truly look at them as how the Father would look at them, then you are able to give them the grace that not only they need, but that you would want for yourself. So that's super important to start off with, because then we take off the negative view of like they are an enemy and now you're back as one.
Yeah, and so the second step is to, it's more important to be effective over being right. It's more important to be effective over being right. See, the goal is to resolve the conflict and come back together. And so everything that you do, everything that you say should be to go towards that goal. And so what we have to do is we have to keep in mind that we're on the same team, right? We're a married couple. We are one. This means that if we're winning together. If we're losing together. And so you can't be more interested. If we're in conflict, I can't go into it going like, she got to know that she's wrong. Like, I can't go in with the mindset that I'm trying to defeat her in this argument, and that I just need to go in there and prove how bad she is so that she can see how right I am. Because if I go in with that kind of attitude, the one thing that's being sacrificed there is unity, is peace, because I'm going to win. And if I win and she loses, we did not win. And so that's not the way that we should be. It should be a win-win solution. And so the best way to fight is to fight fair. To do this by maintaining respect for each other and by valuing each other through our differences and through our different actions. And when you do this, even if I'm sharing something that is truly right, I got to share it in the right way. And the most effective way to settle our differences is to go in with the attitude of humbleness. Even if that person is wrong, I got to humble myself in the way that I'm going to share the things that they have done towards me. And so when we go into this conversation, if we want it to be smooth, we got to be humble in it. Both people, get it, both people have to be responsible for their behavior in the conflict. Mm-hmm. Both people have to be willing to admit their faults in the conflict. Both people have to choose to be forgiving. Here is the honest truth, and I will argue this with you as long as you want. There is never, absolutely never a situation in a conflict where one person, as always Adrienne, is totally wrong, and I am always totally right. That's impossible for that to happen. Let me just tell you, it takes two people to tango. And so in any conflict, no matter what happens, there's always something both people did wrong. Mm-hmm. So we both can come in with a humble spirit. Even if we feel like we're the wronged one, I probably did something in the situation to not help it.
Yeah. And so the third step that we have to remember is to fight the right person. And what do I mean by that when I say that is guys, we have an enemy and he is very real. I mean, that is something the Bible talks about, and he would love nothing more to bring division and separate families and marriages, right? That is something that is constantly talked about. And in fact, it says in John 10:10 that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he's not messing around. So when you are resolving conflict, it's better to put your feeling and emotions aside and remember that your spouse is not the devil.
Look
Satan
forward.
is.
Look forward. Don't
Like,
look at your spouse when she says it's not the devil. Don't be like, are you sure?
Not.
Like, don't look forward.
They are not.
Right?
And I think sometimes our feelings can feel that way. We can feel because the hurt was directly from them, we can just automatically put that assumption and that fire towards them. But it's not them. There is a supernatural battle. There is usually a root of what's happening underneath. No matter how big or small, whether it's stress of the day, no matter it was words that weren't spoken about a week ago, whatever it is, or something going on underneath. And so how do you fight what you can't see? And this is what we've had to learn to practice, really practice. And we're not going to overcomplicate it because we don't have time for that today. It's you pray. You pray. When you can't see it, you pray. And here's the thing is you have to pray for your spouse. You don't pray when you feel like it. You don't pray when it's good. You pray for your spouse. And I don't mean like using the Psalms and saying, oh, I pray justice for him, open his eyes for him to see, help him feel the wrath, Lord. Like you pray for his heart and you pray for her heart. You pray like, Lord, heal the hurts that I may have caused, open my eyes to see what I've done, help him right now have a good day at work. Like you pray good things over your spouse. But the even better thing to do, and probably the more uncomfortable thing to do, which has taken us some time, and we've even done this in our really blows we've had to learn, is you pray with your spouse right then and there. You take that moment, even when it doesn't feel like it, and one of you, and they say this all the time, especially in EXO, somebody has to be the better person. Somebody has to be the better person, and somebody's got to grab the hand and say, look, enough's enough. We're going to pray and literally pray together right now, because I guarantee you it's very hard to be angry with somebody when you are praying about them, for them, and right there with them. So it's something that you have to do. And not only that, guys, when you pray, you have to remember to surrender your plans to God. You surrender the hurt. You surrender the way you want to do it, how you want to approach it. You allow Jesus to speak into that situation.
Okay, last step, and we'll get you out of here because it's taco time. The fourth step is to seek wise counsel. And Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of the fool is right on his own eyes, but the wise man listens to advice. This is something we just really want everybody to understand. Sometimes in conflict, when you're with your spouse, no matter how long, you've tried and you've tried and you've tried, and sometimes you get in situations where you're not finding a resolve, right? You've both been working towards it, but you just seem to not be able to fix the problem that's at hand. And so I want to just remind you, every marriage has conflict. There's no one in here, there's no marriage in here that can say, oh, we never fight, we never argue, there's nothing, right? I even tried at the beginning, you laughed at me, right? Mm-hmm. We all understand that every marriage has some issue in it. So when you go to seek wise counsel, you're not going to go, we wouldn't go up to David and be like, hey, we need to tell you that, we're having a hard time, and him go like, oh my God, you have problems in your marriage? Like, it's not a shock value if you were to go seek counsel. And so this is what I kind of want you to get in your mind. Which is worse? Is it worse for you and worse for your marriage is if you admit that every once in a while you have some conflict? Is that worse to admit that to somebody in the attempt to getting help? Or is it worse that you pretend that your marriage is so perfect, you never fight and you never have any issues, and everybody just thinks you're so wonderful, but then yet one day you're divorced because you never got help and you never resolved conflict, and it just went on to the point where you just both gave up? See, having someone in your life as like an older mentor couple, like if you've been married 5 years, find somebody that's been married 10. If you've been married 10 years, find someone that's been married 20 or 30. And have somebody that's been through a lot help you. We have pastors here that will meet with you. We'll sit down and we'll help you. If you want to get some help from a professional, that's fine. The only thing we say is make sure it's a Christian counselor that is never going to encourage you towards divorce. And so we want to make sure that you're seeking help, but seek help in the right areas. But I want to just leave with this one kind of note at the end, is your marriage and your relationship is worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. And if the answer to helping your marriage is getting help, don't be embarrassed to get help. I mean, we knew that we weren't solving it on our own, so we went out and we went and got help. We went to the XO conference. We started doing research. We started listening to podcasts because what we knew on our own was not fixing it. Now, our marriage is better because of that, and we're able to sit up here and go, look, these are the things that we've learned because we weren't so prideful to go, no, we're pastors. Nobody could know that we have a fight every once in a while. Let me tell you, sometimes she's wrong, okay? And I got to let her know that she's wrong, and we get in a fight. But look, the biggest thing is that you always, always, always fight for your marriage. God wants that marriage to stay intact, but you got to put in the work for that marriage. You got to work for it. And so seeking help is not a bad thing. That's a smart thing, but seek it from the right places. And so the band's going to come out. Let's stand together. This is the end of our series, and I know we talked a lot about communication and conflict and stuff like that today, but we've covered all sorts of subjects throughout this series. And so as we kind of wrap this up, family is always important, but we just want to take a little bit of time, just give you one more opportunity just to kind of bring that family together. And so if you're here with your family as we sing, if you want to bring your family down together and just kind of pray together, we'll have the prayer team here and they can pray over your family. If you need to pray with your spouse, pray with your spouse. If there's things you need to work on, let's work on them. But let's just take this last opportunity just to bind those families together and just allow Jesus to pour over them, because he can protect that family and bind that family together. And let's not give the enemy a foothold to cause division within our family. And so I want to pray over all of us, and then we'll open up the altar, and then you can personally pray for your own family. There's nothing more powerful than you praying for yourself, right? Our prayers are good, but your prayers for yourself are even better. And so we'll join you in that. And so let's pray. Lord, we just thank you so much for everything that you have done, Lord. And so we just ask that you be with these families that are here, that are represented here. And Lord, just bind them together in a way that only you can, that can never be separated or divided by the enemy, Lord. And we just pray a special blessing over the marriages. Lord, we know that you have brought them together and nothing should ever break them apart, Lord. But we also understand sometimes it's hard. And so we just ask that you just bless the communication, let it be healthy. We ask that you just be in the conflicts, Lord, that you show that, no one is perfect, no one is always right, Lord. But if we both humble ourselves and come together, then unity can exist, Lord. So help us to fight for our marriages. Help us to save them and bring them together, Lord, because you have blessed them and you have made them, Lord, so they are holy and they are special. And so we just ask that you just continue to pour out upon this church and all the families that are in it, Lord, because your blood is powerful. And so we just plead the blood over everyone in here and allow your presence to be with them and bring them together. And so we just thank you for what you've shared, all the wisdom you have given us. Let it be used for your glory and for your purpose. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.